Elijah Hayes was a rugged man in his late 40s who lived alone in a cabin just outside the village of Fern Hollow, nestled deep in the wilderness of British Columbia, Canada. Life moved slow in this remote region, but Elijah liked it that way. He found peace where most would find isolation, especially by the glassy waters of Clearwater Lake, surrounded by towering pines and haunting silence. Each morning, Elijah drove his weathered green truck down to the water's edge, fly rod in hand, hoping to catch a few steelhead trout while soaking in the crisp alpine air. It was his ritual. Fishing brought him a sense of stillness, something he'd needed since the loss of his wife years ago. One early morning, just as the sun was beginning to bleed orange across the horizon, Elijah parked his truck in its usual spot. The lake was mirror calm, cloaked in a delicate layer of fog. The world felt hushed. As he sat on a broad slab of rock, baiting his line, a low growl pierced the quiet. Elijah froze as he turned toward the sound, half expecting to see a grizzly emerging from the trees. But this was different. It wasn't a bear's bellow. It was deeper, guttural, a wolf. Maybe more than one. Elijah's stomach tightened. Wolves rarely came this close to the lake at dawn. Curiosity mixed with unease. He set his rod aside and followed the sounds, weaving through ferns and branches. The growls grew louder, interspersed with a high-pitched, desperate cry. Elijah's instincts screamed that something was wrong. Crouching low, he parted a wall of shrubs, and what he saw nearly stopped his heart. That a tiny bear cub, no more than a few months old, was cowering in the middle of a forest clearing. Its fur was matted with blood, and a visible wound on its leg throbbed with every breath. Encircling the cub were 9 or 10 snarling wolves, their yellow eyes locked on their prey. Elijah stood petrified for a moment. He was no fool, charging a wolf pack unarmed was suicidal. But he couldn't let the cub die like that. His hands clenched into fists as adrenaline surged through him. He grabbed the thickest branch he could find, lifted it high, and with a voice roughened by urgency, bellowed into the forest. The wolves turned sharply, surprised. One snapped its jaws at him, testing his resolve. Elijah stepped forward, swinging the branch wide, his voice rising again like thunder. The wolves hesitated. One lunged, and Elijah hurled a rock with uncanny precision, striking its shoulder. The wolf yelped and backed away. Using the moment, Elijah pushed forward, placing himself between the wolves and the trembling cub. Arms outstretched, he tried to look larger, louder, more dangerous than he felt. Seconds passed like hours, then, one by one, the wolves retreated, disappearing into the mist without a sound. Elijah exhaled, heart thudding. He turned and looked down at the cub, who was watching him with wide, frightened eyes. There was pain in them, but also, miraculously, trust. That he knelt, whispering gently, "It's okay, little one. I've got you." The cub whimpered, its tiny frame shivering. Elijah examined the leg wound, deep, but not fatal if treated soon. The cub tried to stand but collapsed immediately. With care, Elijah scooped the young bear into his arms. It didn't resist. In fact, it seemed to lean into him. He made his way back to the lake where his truck waited, the rising sun beginning to burn off the fog. Laying the cub gently on a folded blanket in the back seat, he whispered, "Hang in there, buddy." He gathered his gear quickly and climbed in. He drove the winding road back to his cabin. Elijah's mind raced. He'd have to clean the wound, find something to feed it, and, eventually, figure out how to contact wildlife services. But for now, all that mattered was keeping the cub alive. His home was a modest log cabin tucked against the tree line, with a small fenced yard and a stone chimney. Once inside, he laid the cub on a soft rug near the fire and fetched a first aid kit. The cub winced as Elijah cleaned the wound with antiseptic, but it didn't bite or claw. It simply watched him, those round eyes flickering between fear and relief. Elijah wrapped the leg, then warmed some porridge and mixed it with milk. The cub sniffed it suspiciously, then began to eat in slow, eager bites that he stayed home the next day to monitor the cub and called the local wildlife agency. After a detailed explanation, they advised him to continue caring for it temporarily while they searched for signs of its mother. Elijah nodded, even though they couldn't see him. Deep down, he already knew, the cub wasn't just a responsibility. It was a companion. He named him Cody. Over the following weeks, Cody's wound healed. His fur grew back in patches, and he started to play in the yard, limping less each day. Elijah began to laugh again, something he hadn't done in years. But even in their moments of joy, he noticed how Cody would sit at the edge of the fence, gazing toward the forest with longing. Then, a month later, the agency called. A large female bear had been spotted repeatedly near Clearwater Lake, circling, sniffing, searching. The possibility was strong. Cody's mother was still out there. Elijah knew what he had to do. The next morning, he packed some food and medical supplies, loaded his fishing gear, and placed Cody, now stronger but still limping, into the back of the truck. As they drove toward the lake, Elijah felt a tightness in his chest that he parked at their usual spot. Cody sniffed the air, ears twitching. Elijah sat down by the lake and cast his line, pretending not to watch the trees. Then, a rustle, out of the shadows emerged a massive female bear. Her fur was wild, her eyes frantic. She growled, a low, searching sound. Cody perked up, growled softly in response, and limped forward. Mother and cub locked eyes. What happened next felt like magic. Cody ran, wobbled, toward her. The bear rushed forward, sniffing and nuzzling him, her massive head lowering to examine his bandaged leg. Cody leaned into her, letting out a soft, guttural sound that nearly broke Elijah's heart. He stepped back, giving them space. The mother bear turned to face him, her gaze cautious, but not hostile. For a moment, they stood frozen in mutual recognition. Then she gave a quiet grunt, almost like a farewell. With Cody at her side, she turned and disappeared into the trees. Elijah stood there long after they'd gone, the lake calm behind him, the line of his fishing rod unmoving. He had saved a life, but more than that, he had helped something precious be made whole again. Every time he returned to Clearwater Lake after that, he would glance into the trees, quietly hoping to see a familiar little shape standing tall beside its mother, and even if he never did, he would always know they were out there, somewhere, together.
Thank you for watching till the end. Please like and subscribe to support us.